We're now going to look at styling elements with JavaScript. So we're going to be accessing the style property and setting individual style requirements for a specific element. So let's head over to our text editor. We're going to go ahead and create a box on a page and then start to add different styling elements to it. So let's go ahead and create a box, and we're going to, in fact, let's pre-create this box. It might make a little bit more sense. So div ID box. So we've just created a div on a page with the ID of box. So this is going to be document.get element by ID box. Okay, so we've got this element now. Let's just take a look at that on the page. Okay, so we've got the element here, the box element here. There's nothing in it at the moment. There's no styles attached to it at all. We're going to also keep an eye on this element.style section here of our styles. So make sure you've got this elements inspector open as well as your console if you want to have a play around with the console. But we're going to go ahead and check out how we can style this. So let's open the, let's have a look in the console. So you say box.style. So we have this box.style element here. Well, this is actually an object. So it's an object that has lots of different properties. And if we open this, we can have a look and examine each of the properties. And these are all simply CSS properties in a sort of object property form. So they're not actually the CSS properties. These just allow us to set the CSS properties using this object, this CSS style declaration object. So let's go ahead and have a go at this. We'll do this all within the browser just so it makes a little bit more sense. But let's say box.style. At the moment we know that we've got the CSS style declaration object, but we can then say dot, because we have more properties, remember. Width. So remember, this object as it stands doesn't have a width, it doesn't have a height, it doesn't have anything like that. So we can say width equals, so we're going to define this exactly as we would within our CSS style sheet. So if we did want to set a style, a height to this box, for example, let's just do this styles inline, we would say something like hash box, and then inside here we would say width 25 pixels, height 25 pixels, for example. So we're using a selector here. We've covered that in JavaScript, and then we set the property that we want to the value that we want. Now for things like, for example, background color, let's say we set that to black, you'll see that in CSS we've got background hyphen color. Now in JavaScript we don't have the hyphens for property names, so instead you'll find that we have background color instead, which isn't a valid CSS rule. So we're not directly interacting with, you know, the CSS properties here. We're not setting any properties on a page, but just bear that in mind that, you know, some of your styles here will be different. So again, if we just look at that, for example, background color, it's a background color with camel case, so like that, instead of background color. So just bear that in mind when you're changing styles. So let's go ahead and set a width to this. So we'll set a width of string value 100px. So remember, we're doing it all the same. Now you'll notice a couple of things here. Element.style has changed here, so it's reflected in this styles portion of my element inspector, and it's also added an attribute here with the styles. And in a moment we'll look at a separate way that we can actually change these styles, and you can probably guess how we might do that, but we'll do this individually, and then we'll look at how we can do it all in bulk. So I've said box.style.width is 100 pixels, box.style.height is 100 pixels. We can now see that the blue area on the page is where we have this shape start to form within this div. So now let's go ahead and set the background color. So I'm going to say box.style.background color. Of course, you could use background as the shorthand property, but I only want to set a color here. Let's say set this to slate gray, for example. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say box.style.border. Of course, we have all of the different border properties here, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the shorthand, and I'm going to say 1 pixel solid black. Okay, so we've now set a black border on our element. Let's go ahead and, while we're here, just say box.innerText equals hello, I am a box. Okay, so I don't like the way this looks, so I'm going to go ahead and change this. So box.style.padding equals 10 pixels. There we are. I accidentally added a semicolon there, that's why it didn't work the first time. So what we're now going to do is set the color. So I'm going to say box.style.color equals #FFF for white, and there we go. So we can do things like set the font styles. So you should be used to the console by now, so you can go ahead and play around with all the different styles here. So let's just go and reflect that inside of JavaScript, just so we have the code to reference and it helps to practice here. So I'm going to say box.style, or rather box style equals box.style, and that just provides us a shorthand way of accessing the box styles rather than having to say box.style.something. So I'll say box.style.width equals 100 pixels. Let's go and duplicate this down. We know that we want to change the height to 100 pixels. We know that we want to change the background color to slate gray. We know that we want to change the padding to 10 pixels. And we know that we want to change the color of this to white so we can read the text properly. And we'll go ahead and give this default text, so I am a box. So now we see the styled box. Oh, we didn't do the border actually. Let's just go ahead and do that. So there's one thing to consider here. It would be absolutely awful practice if you wanted to create a box on a page, have it styled, and you would do it all with JavaScript when you could use CSS. It always makes sense to have your style sheet at the top of your page that contains your styles. Never use JavaScript to specifically style elements if you could just do them on page load, because at the moment this doesn't really make too much sense, because we're creating an element and styling it using JavaScript when we really don't need to. What this is useful for is things like if things need to change dynamically when you click on them. So for example, we could have the box, when we click on it, we could, for example, change the color of it or something like that. So when we click it, we might change it to a specific color. So for example, we could say box dot on click equals function, and then when we click it, we could say box style dot background color equals red, for example. So now we've added an event handler. When we click the box, the background goes red. So that would be the good use of actually using the style property and setting styles this way. Now I did mention there is another way to set these. So let's go ahead and get rid of these just for now. Now, to quickly set a load of styles without having to access each individual property, let's say this didn't exist either. We'll keep it there for now, but we'll just pretend it doesn't exist. We can say box.set attribute style, and then we can provide a sort of actual CSS list of styles that we want. So we could say here width 100px, height 100px, and then background color. Remember using a hyphen this time because we're actually setting inline styles. And actually remember to spell background properly. Slate gray. So we'll just add them for now. We don't need to add anything else. So now when we refresh, we get the actual styles that we need as the style attribute. So what we can do is we can access styles either through the actual style attribute using the set attribute method on whatever object we've selected, or we can do it individually using box.style.width, height, background color, or any other CSS property that you can set this way. Bear in mind as well, because I've set lots of styles in one go, I've cached this this here, so we don't have to keep saying box.style.width, box.style.height. And the final point, just to reiterate, do not set styles like this if you don't need to set them dynamically. So only set them if you actually need to do this dynamically. So let's just comment this up. So set using an attribute, or set individual properties and event handler. So we've sort of talked about the way we're doing it this way, and also when we should actually use the style changes, and it should only be really for things like dynamic functionality when you need to, not on page load. You use CSS styles for that. So we've looked at setting styles here within JavaScript.